Group warns of potential catastrophe on old tanker off Yemen. A leading environmental group is warning of a potential major oil leak or explosion on an aging oil tanker moored off of Yemen's Red Sea coast. Cairo. A leading environmental group warned Thursday of a potential major oil leak or explosion on an aging oil tanker moored off of Yemen's Red Sea coast. The neglected vessel is loaded with more than 1 million barrels of crude oil. Greenpeace released a report listing the environmental, humanitarian and economic impacts of a potential oil spill from the FSO safer on conflict-riddled Yemen and the Red Sea region in general. The event could be one of the biggest oil spill disasters in history and would cause widespread severe environmental damage and exacerbate the humanitarian crisis unfolding in the country, the group said in its report. The rusting, neglected Japanese-built tanker has been moored in its location 6 kilometers (3.7 miles) away from Yemen's western Red Sea port of Ras Isa since the 1980s, when it was sold to the Yemeni government. Prior to the escalation of Yemen's conflict in 2015, the vessel was used to store and export oil from fields in eastern Marib province. The 42-page Greenpeace report argues that an oil spill or explosion on the tanker would lead to the closure of desalination plants in Yemen, which will eventually disrupt the supply of drinking water to nearly 10 million people. The entire Red Sea region's drinking water supply could be contaminated by oil in just 3 weeks following a spill, said Greenpeace. A major spill would also lead to the closure of Yemen's western ports, including Hodeidah and Salif, through which 68% of aid is brought into the Arab world's poorest country, the report said. Up to 8.4 million people relying on food aid supplies would be affected, said the Amsterdam-based advocacy group. An oil leak would also cause the closure of fisheries, the rise of air pollution levels in the region and the disruption of shipping traffic through Bab el-Mandeb Strait and the Suez Canal, said the report. Internal documents obtained by the Associated Press in 2020 show that seawater has entered the tanker's engine compartment, causing damage to pipes and increasing the risk of sinking. Rust has covered parts of the tanker and the inert gas that prevents the tanks from gathering flammable gases has leaked out. Experts say maintenance is no longer possible because the damage to the ship is irreversible, according to the AP report. The question is no longer whether the catastrophe will happen. The question is when it will happen, Greenpeace MENA campaigns manager Ahmed El-Drubi told reporters in a virtual news conference Thursday. Ras Isa is controlled by the country's Houthi rebels. Since 2015, the Houthis have been at war with the internationally recognized government, which is backed by a Saudi-led coalition and the United States. Last month, a Yemeni official with the UN-recognized government said there was an oil leak from the tanker. Under-Secretary of Hodeidah Province Walid al-Qudaimi blamed the situation on the UN Security Council and called on countries bordering the Red Sea to act urgently. The UN has constantly warned of the catastrophic impact of a potential leak from the aging and neglected tanker. However, none of its diplomatic efforts to resolve the matter has materialized. Last year, the UN accused the rebels of using the tanker as a bargaining chip to advance their political agenda in. The technology and expertise to transfer the oil to other tankers exist, but despite months of negotiations we are still at a stalemate, said Paul Horseman, project leader of Greenpeace's Safer Response Team. It is really time to put aside the politics and agree on a contingency plan. Horseman told reporters that his group is calling for the deployment of a containment boom around the tanker as a first line of defense. Booms are interconnected, floating barriers that are usually spread across the water to stop a major oil spill. The boom is not a solution, but it could potentially buy us time in case there is a spill, said Horseman. The only solution is to move the oil safely from safer to another tanker. Chris Johnson, a UN senior policy advisor who was present during the release of the Greenpeace report, said the UN is already working on bringing a boom from Djibouti to Hodeidah port. She added that the UN is pursuing with diplomatic efforts to reach an agreement between the Houthis, the Saudi-led coalition and the Yemeni government to resolve the matter. Meanwhile, the UN is trying to locate a suitable vessel to which the oil could be transferred, Johnson told reporters.